of notes as I usually do. The member for Denison.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, my question is specifically to the Prime Minister because the community wants to hear his answer. Prime Minister, I've just given notice of a private member's bill to combat poker machine problem gambling that would implement the Productivity Commission recommendations of $1 maximum bets and mandatory pre-commitment. Seeing as problem gamblers lose $5 billion annually and suffer terribly to the parasites in the poker machine industry, something you're on the record as being concerned with, will you support the bill or at least allow a debate on it?
Just before I call the Prime Minister, the member for Herbert will cease interjecting. He interjected right through the answer. I'll call the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for his question, and I recognise his long interest in this topic. The government recognises that while most people gamble responsibly, gambling is a major problem, a major social problem for some Australians. We recognise too, Mr Speaker, that the laws governing gambling are, of course, within the powers of state and territory parliaments who licence premises and poker machines, and that's why the Commonwealth has abolished the National Gambling Regulator and restored control of gaming machine regulation to the states. They have that jurisdiction clearly and plainly. Now, we are nonetheless very interested in working with industry, with state and territory governments and other key stakeholders to ensure that there are implemented practical solutions that will reduce problem gambling.
The member for Denison on a point of order.
Speaker, a point of order. The state governments have shown they can't be trusted.
The member for Denison will resume his seat if he can't state the point of order. The Prime Minister has the call.
Well, I thank the honourable member also for his views on federation, but we are a federation, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I'd invite the Minister for Human Services to elaborate on the government's approach on this topic.
The Minister for Human Services.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and I also thank the member for the questions directed to the Prime Minister. And I'm aware of the private member's bill and the two key provisions in that bill which go to mandatory pre-commitment and to dollar bets. In relation to mandatory pre-commitment, it was something that we had considered in the past and we had rejected it, in part because, in essence, it requires a licence to gamble. When we know that the other side is serious about this as well as yourself, but we are not, because we know that most people indeed do gamble responsibly and don't need to register themselves necessarily to put a couple of dollars in the machine. In relation to dollar bets, Mr Speaker, this was considered by the Productivity Commission, and it did find, the Productivity Commission, that 99% of poker machines today were not technically capable of introducing dollar bets, and consequently it would cost $1.5 billion to implement. I also just re-emphasise what the Prime Minister said, that this is largely governed by state and territory jurisdictions. They licence the machines, they regulate the machines, and they are responsible for their operation. We are, of course, we take gambling problems very seriously. We put considerable funds into financial counsellors which support people with problem gambling, as well as into gambling research. I think the problems of the future will come from the online environment, where, as you'd be aware, we have an inquiry into that and we'll be responding to that shortly.